Moon Knight is one of Marvel's most complex heroes, with multiple personalities that make him quite unpredictable. From a mercenary to a businessman to a cab driver, Mark Spector's fractured mind is key to his story. Mark Spector's multiple personalities. At the heart of Moon Knight's identity is Mark Spector's struggle with dissociative identity disorder, a condition that gives rise to multiple distinct personalities. This of course fractured his psyche, and it's the result of Mark's traumatic past as a mercenary. And this of course shapes his every decision in the Marvel Universe. The various personalities do allow Mark to cope with different facts of his life, and they often serve as means of escape from his past violence or guilt. Now, each personality carries its own set of skills, outlooks, and of course emotional baggage, which creates a multi-dimensional character who navigates the world through the lenses of these alternate personas. And it's quite interesting for the reader or the viewer. Mark's personalities, his mercenary self, his business persona, and the street-smart Jake Lockley, these are not just a part of him, they're actually his survival mechanisms. Mark Spector is the primary personality that carries the legacy of the Moon Knight persona. As a former mercenary, Mark's military training makes him a fierce fighter, but his violent and morally ambiguous past is also a source of deep personal conflict. See, Spector is the most focused and driven of Mark's personalities, and his decision to become Moon Knight comes after a brush with passing away in Egypt, where he was then resurrected by the god Khonshu. However, his past as a soldier and mercenary also haunts him, and he often grapples with feelings of guilt and shame. Mark's approach to justice is quite brutal, and I'll be honest, he's pretty unapologetic about it. He uses his combat skills and tactical mind to seek vengeance on those that he deems worthy of punishment. He's a conflicted man driven by the need for redemption. Sounds like a comic book if I've ever heard it. Stephen Grant is the wealthy alter ego. He's perhaps the most well-known of Mark's alternate personalities, though not the most frequently in control. That's the part that's a little sketchy. In stark contrast to Mark's violent tendencies, Stephen represents a more stable and outwardly successful identity. In the comics, Stephen is a wealthy businessman who owns a company and lives a life of luxury on the surface. It's actually the exact opposite of Mark's past as a mercenary. Maybe that's why he came out. This personality allows Mark to interact with high society and often serves as a mask almost, to blend into the more mundane parts of the world, the more human parts. Not a lot of Egypts and gods just going to work. However, Stephen's life is built on a lie, and he often is depicted as being out of his depth in the face of Moon Knight's more dangerous missions. While Stephen can be charming and socially adept, he struggles with his own sense of inadequacy, sometimes unaware that his wealth and status are simply just constructs created by Mark's fractured mind, maybe to escape the trauma of his past. Jake Lockley is the street-level investigator. He is Mark Spector's most grounded and street-savvy alter ego. As a cab driver, Jake represents Mark's connection to the underbelly of society, using his position to gather information and keep tabs on the criminal world. Lockley is often portrayed as being gruff and no-nonsense, a personality that fits well with Moon Knight's more brutal and, for lack thereof a better term, a direct approach to justice. It's not the best, but it's something. Unlike Stephen, who operates in the world of the rich and powerful, Jake is in the streets. He uses his cab to eavesdrop on conversations and collect intel that could aid Mark's Moon Knight persona. Jake's role is crucial to Mark's overall understanding of the criminal landscape, but Jake also serves as a form of escape, another way really for Mark to compartmentalize his troubled life and continue his fight for justice while maintaining some distance from the more chaotic parts of his existence. Mark's struggle with his various personalities is more than just a narrative gimmick. Although it is fun to watch and read, this is actually a reflection of the complex emotional and psychological toll that his life has taken. We're literally looking through life through Mark's eyes. Each personality represents a different facet of his trauma, from the violence of Mark's mercenary days to the wealth and success that Stephen represents, and also to the gritty survivalist instincts of Jake. It all swirls together in a crazy comic. The interplay between these identities creates an ongoing internal conflict for Mark, which forces him to confront the aspects of himself that he would, of course, rather avoid through these characters. The tension between his various personas shape Moon Knight's stories as Mark tries to understand his place in the world while dealing with the consequences of his fractured brain. Now, this internal conflict is not just a battle of personalities, although it does really look like that at times, but this is actually an ongoing battle for Mark's very sense of self. Now, despite their flaws, Mark's personalities are integral to his heroic journey. Each one contributes something valuable to his crime-fighting efforts. Mark, with his tactical training, handles the combat-heavy situations. Stephen uses his wealth and status to secure resources and information, and then there's Jake with his street-level connections, and he of course gathers intel and keeps keeps tabs on criminals. So together, you smash them all together into one person, these personalities do form a unique, almost a schizophrenic approach to justice. However, Moon Knight's real strength does lie in his ability to pull together these fragments of his brain to form a functional, and sometimes he goes a little too far and just eliminates the competition. Mark Spector's relationship with Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon that I mentioned earlier, does add another layer of complexity to his multiple personalities. Yep, we got one more, throw it in there. Khonshu's resurrection of Mark and then further demands for him to act as his earthly avatar creates this power dynamic that is full of tension. I mean, this guy has enough going on and now you got a god telling you what to do? Give me a break. The god manipulates Mark through his various personalities, often using threats and promises of power to sway Mark's decisions. For instance, Khonshu frequently tries to control the actions of Mark's alter egos, sometimes even pushing them to take violent action, all in his name. Sounds like a mean god. This godlike influence further complicates Mark's sense of self and autonomy, as he is constantly battling the god's demand for vengeance, and then his own internal moral compass is going off the rocker. The psychological tug of war between Mark's fractured personalities and of course Khonshu's overpowering, scary presence is a reoccurring theme that has defined the character for decades. The Disney series, let's talk about it. Did you watch it? Did you like it? What didn't you like? Comment down below all your thoughts. In the Disney Plus Moon Knight series that came out in 2022, Stephen Grant is given a much more prominent role than he did in the comics, where he was often portrayed as just one of Mark's many personalities. But in the show, Stephen's personality is fully fleshed out, with his humor and intelligence creating a pretty fun and endearing, relatable character. Definitely works for a Disney Plus show, I see why they did it that way. The series also explores Stephen's development as Mark's anchor, often a more sympathetic and introspective look at Mark's struggle with his disorder. The show's take on Stephen gives fans a deeper understanding of Mark's trauma, showing how each personality serves as a coping mechanism, really, for Mark's turbulent past. It's a significant departure from the traditional role Stephen played in the comics, where he was more of a mask that Mark would wear to interact with the world. Here they just flipped it.
Number 10. Jonathan Walker. US agent might be a hero now in the comics, but when he started out in the 616 continuity, he was manipulated into becoming a villain. Jonathan Walker was initially known as antagonistic hero Super Patriot, who did his best to discredit Captain America, claiming that he himself stood for the United States' true ideals. As a result of Red Skull's meddling and manipulation, he was appointed to replace Steve Rogers as the new Captain America after Rogers stepped down as the government actually owned the title and refused to let him keep the title if he wasn't going to be working for them. As Captain America, Walker took a very extreme and violent approach that put him into direct conflict with Rogers, who was currently going by the mantle of the Captain. In the end, the Captain defeated Walker, and after Skull's involvement in the ordeal was revealed, the two ended up teaming up to take him down, starting off on Walker's path to redemption as hero US agent. Number 9. Cap Wolf. Werewolf Captain America isn't as much an alternate version of Cap as it is a distinct moment in Cap's history where he happened to be transformed into a werewolf. Captain America ends up becoming a werewolf while on the trail of Colonel John Jameson, who had gone missing. Captain America himself had reason to suspect that something awful had happened to Jameson, who it seemed may be plagued by his wolf side once more. Jameson was known in the past for operating as Man-Wolf. It seemed as though a wolf-like creature or werewolf was responsible for a series of murders. In the end, however, Cap's trail ended up leading him into a much more complex and disturbing plot where a villain was attempting to use a recreated Werewolf by Night wolf serum to turn people into werewolves. Captain America became one of their victims and for a time became a werewolf himself. Granted, he was still a hero at this point, but werewolves in general are considered to be somewhat uncontrollable monsters who are at least occasionally ruled by their own bloodlust. So I think we can at least partially count Cap Wolf. Also, I needed to complete the monster trifecta. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Captain America lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. MCU US Agents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, US Agent John Walker accidentally becomes an evil version of Captain America without really intending to do that. Really, it's more complicated than him just being straight up evil, as it is with most Marvel Cinematic Universe antagonists. Walker really wants to do right by the Captain America mantle and do it justice. He's a soldier who has worked super hard to earn this title, but also, although his heart might be in the right place, that doesn't mean that he knows the best way to approach replacing Cap or doing right by his legacy. Walker ends up becoming misguided as a result of dealing with so much disrespect from those around him, and as a result of him not being, as powerful as Cap would be, because he doesn't have the super soldier serum. He realizes that being chosen and respected as the new Captain America by the government doesn't necessarily mean that the people of the United States will also respect you, nor that Steve's actual allies and friends will respect you as his replacement either. After he loses his own best friend, Lamar Hoskins, he becomes completely fed up with trying to figure out how to do what's right, and instead decides to do what he feels needs to be done. This makes him much more violent and much more dangerous, turning him into an enemy of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and leading the government to later on remove his title, his honors, and basically just overall dismiss him. Fortunately, the US agent still found a place on what will likely be either the MCU Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers team. TBD, or at least to be declared, if not to be determined. Number 7. Mutant Captain America. This version of Captain America was a mutant who ended up replacing the original Captain America after he died in a Sentinel attack. He wasn't just given the mantle of Cap either, but also ended up receiving the super soldier serum. He had this and his own mutant powers besides, which made him pretty crazy powerful. Although the mutant version of Cap had good intentions, his powers were somewhat uncontrollable, which was a big problem. His powers going haywire was what ended up causing the death of his own group, the Six, and the Avengers, who he was at the time fighting against. This caused him to lose his sanity, turning him into a full-on villain and a loose cannon who attacked and defeated pretty much everyone who came after him, except Havoc, who managed to successfully kill and defeat the crazed mutant version of Captain America. Poor mutant Captain America, it sounds like it was a rough go, Number 6. Zombie Colonel America. What's worse than a werewolf Cap? A zombie Cap, obviously. This is the version of Captain America that we get in the Marvel Zombieverse. Although really, this isn't Captain America as a zombie, it's Colonel America, because that is Steve Rogers' hero mantle in this reality. Here, Colonel America was infected and turned into a zombie during that first confrontation with a zombified Sentry, which the Avengers responded to in downtown New York. Zombie Cap was responsible for turning Spider-Man into a zombie, biting him after he himself was infected. He was one of the zombies to fight against the villains for who should get the remains of Galactus' corpse, and of course with it the power Cosmic, which would enable them to travel to other worlds, which they then could devour. However, Zombie Cap was defeated by his nemesis, a zombified Red Skull. So, no power Cosmic for him. He dead. He's double dead. Really. Number 5. William Burnside. William Burnside was the Captain America of the 1950s, who ended up being retconned to not actually be Steve Rogers at all, although he was a man who believed he was Steve Rogers. This version of Captain America was later revealed to be William Burnside initially, a man who was hired to replace Captain America after he went missing in World War II. This version of Captain America was racist and extremely anti-communist, echoing the McCarthy communist witch hunts of those times. Burnside legally changed his name to Stephen Rogers and would have an extended lifespan thanks to a version of the super soldier serum that he was exposed to. However, because this was not a perfected version of the serum, it apparently would also cause him to become more extreme over time as his psyche and mind degraded as a result, so made him pretty crazy and pretty evil. Number 4. Evil Clone. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, this has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, his personality, or his memories, or some combination of those, into the clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. For this version though, we're going to be talking about issue 350 of Captain America, where the Red Skull in Stephen Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole commission/Walker kerfuffle that we talked about earlier on this list. His plan this time around in a Steve Rogers' clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and use capitalism itself to dismantle the democracy of America and destroy the nation from the inside out. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue ends with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. But he did try it. He did try. And don't worry, he would come back in more clone bodies. That's how he do. Number 3. Vampire King. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes king of the vampires. In the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II, by Baron Blood. Baron Blood turns him into a vampire. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude. Likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas listed here, this version of Captain America has his own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating and decapitating him in the end. Number 2. President Red Skull. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull who beat Rogers and took to wearing his Captain America suit off and around his new redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the US, which he renames America. America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but also almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America out there because he's Red Skull. Although, like I said, he's not fully a Cap alt really, but he definitely evil, so. And he does wear that suit a lot. Number 1. Hydra Supreme. This alternate version of Captain America was initially retconned to be the version of Captain America. Steven Rogers ended up being revealed as a Hydra sleeper agent in one of the biggest twists in comic book history. All his heroic actions had apparently just been Steve buying time and building trust so that he'd be in the perfect position to take over the US and could then reveal his true colors. Hail Hydra to this day is one of the most iconic lines ever uttered by the supposed hero. However, it all turned out that this version of Cap wasn't the real Steve Rogers of 616. Instead, what happened was Kobik, the sentient living version of the Cosmic Cube, was convinced by Red Skull that reality should be warped so that Cap could become an agent of Hydra. When this happened, the real heroic version of Captain America ended up trapped within a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and the now altered version of the character took his place in the reality of 616. In the end, the true Cap would be freed from the shard and would end up fighting and defeating his evil Hydra Supreme alternate version. And if you're worried, don't worry, the shard was made bigger, so it wasn't like little tiny Cap running around. Number 10. Dormammu Universe Strange. This alternate version of Stephen Strange is a loyal follower of Dormammu and hails from the reality of Earth 5113, also referred to as the Dormammu Universe. The Stephen Strange of Earth 616 ends up transporting himself and his team of defenders here in issue number 3 of the 2005 Defender series. The Stephen Strange of this reality is bald and is revealed to be a servant of Dormammu, who rules over Earth. Oh dear. In this reality, Dormammu's servant Stephen Strange keeps Clea prisoner instead of being in a romantic relationship with her. Despite how he mistreats her, Clea still feels bad for Strange's predicament too, even crying for him, knowing of the reality that could have been for them both. Strange in this reality really gives me strong Jafar vibes. That's how I know he's evil. Number 9. Ultimate Doctor Strange Sr. In the Ultimate reality, there are really 2 different versions of Doctor Strange. The more prominent one that most people know is actually Stephen Strange Jr., who is the son of the original Stephen Strange and his wife, Clea, whom you might also be familiar with from the 616 reality. Stephen Strange Sr. wasn't so much super evil in this reality, but he did do Clea dirty, likely because of his own trauma. You see, Clea and Stephen ended up married, but this wasn't his first marriage. Stephen not only lost the fine motor skills in his hands when he was in that fateful car accident that changed him forever, in the 1610 universe he was driving drunk and his first wife, who was pregnant at the time, was also with him in the car. Now when the car crashed, his wife was killed and their future child was also lost. When Clea revealed that she was pregnant to Strange, he simply vanished, probably because of what happened before with his first wife. Clea looked everywhere but she could not find him. It was believed he either locked himself away in another dimension or took his own life, but either way, he was never seen again. Clea would go on a journey of mystical self-discovery similar to Stephen after his accident, but would ultimately decide to raise her son without the knowledge of mysticism, with him believing that his father was merely a surgeon who had died. Until of course he goes on to become Stephen Strange Jr., who also kind of becomes like his dad, and then I'm pretty sure he gets killed like almost right away. Oh, the Ultimate Universe, what a strange place it was. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Doctor Strange lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Sorcerer Extreme. Sorcerer Extreme has the combined souls and powers of Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, and Dr. Stephen Strange, who show up basically as two entities in one package in Secret Wars Battle World issue number 1. Here they are on the run from the Infernal Four and end up facing off and defeating alternate versions of Hulk, Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Spider-Man. Well, this makes the characters sound pretty evil. Those 4 characters were actually the members of the Infernal Four, who were essentially corrupted from being trapped in the demonic domain. So basically, they were pretty evil themselves. Still, Sorcerer Extreme does kill people wielding magic guns, so he's somewhat questionable when it comes to the morals, at least of his methods. Stephen and Frank, as a result, seem to butt heads somewhat while sharing the same physical form. Number 7. Strange 2099. Another alternate version of Strange who meant well, but who at times was kinda corrupted. This time, not so much by her own trauma like the ultimate Dr. Stephen Strange Sr., but instead by external demonic forces. More specifically, a literal demon who she was possibly tricked into sharing a body with. This version of Doctor Strange that we are talking about here is known simply as Jeannie. She hails from the reality of Earth 928, aka the Marvel futuristic 2099 universe. While for the most part the demon within Jeannie doesn't cause too many problems, at one point it does fully take over her body, making at least her physical form evil for a time, until she is freed by 2099's Moon Knight wielding the Soul Sword. Moon Knight in 2099 is also pretty cool. Lots of cool 2099 characters. We have lists for that, by the way, if you're interested in the 2099 universe. Number 6. Loki, Sorcerer Supreme. Loki ended up tricking Doctor Strange for a time out of his title, becoming the Sorcerer Supreme in his place instead. He did this with somewhat good intentions, believing he was better prepared and suited to the role of Sorcerer Supreme and could protect Earth against threats that Strange himself seemed unprepared to face. Basically, Loki felt that Strange wasn't willing to break enough rules to be Sorcerer Supreme, and Loki was like, I could do that, so I'm gonna take this job for the better of the world. However, the fact remains that Loki still tricked Stephen, didn't come by the artifacts associated with or the powers of the title fairly, and is often known for being more a villain than a hero in the comics. While Loki took up Strange's place, Stephen was forced to become a veterinarian in the interim, which is actually pretty cute. I gotta say, the idea of Doctor Strange as like a pet doctor, it's pretty great. Also, this is where Bats, the talking and now ghostly Basset Hound, comes from, if you were wondering. So we got that out of this story arc, which is pretty great. Number 5. Doctor Strange Fate. While not inherently evil, Doctor Strange Fate did attempt to sacrifice both the DC Universe and Marvel Universe just to keep the Amalgam Universe alive. This made him a villain of Marvel's Doctor Strange, whose own world was actually threatened by his plot. Doctor Strange battled Strange Fate and won, despite him on paper being a stronger version of the two, being part Charles Xavier, part Doctor Strange, and part Dr. Fate from DC. However, Strange pitied Strange Fate and the Amalgam Universe and allowed them to continue on, but within a pocket dimension, safely encased so they could not threaten the other universes. Number 4. Leader of the Black Priests. The Black Priests aren't necessarily evil so much in the way that, you know, they don't do things just for the sake of being bad. They are more on the side of good, but they are willing to do whatever it takes to protect the multiverse, which can make them pretty bad and pretty evil at times, especially when dealing with issues like incursions. Stephen, in a reality that no longer exists but is still part of his main continuity story, albeit somewhat of a tangent considering the present continuity, ended up becoming the leader of the Black Priests, and as such joined them in destroying entire alternate Earths, believing he was doing what was right. Still, I feel like if you were destroying entire worlds, even it's for the greater good, you probably need to like re-examine your alignment, be like, maybe there's a better way to do this. Number 3, Zombie Doctor Strange. Zombies are almost always evil, and Doctor Strange is not an exception to that standard, as we see when he becomes a zombie in the Marvel Zombies universe. This version of Steven hails from the reality of Earth 2149, sometimes referred to as Earth Z. We don't know how Steven became a zombie, but before that happened, he was one of the few last standing survivors to join Nick Fury in his fight against the invasion, as we see him present during Fury's speech on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where Fury has rallied together some surviving heroes and villains to help battle against the army of undead. In the end, however, Strange too becomes a zombie, and from there he ends up developing and satiating his taste for human flesh and brains. Number 2, Doctor Strange Supreme. Of course, we have to talk about this alternate version, the one I mentioned in the intro. This is one of the most evil versions of Doctor Strange we've seen to date. He appears in the What If series episode number 4, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart instead of his hands. In this episode, Strange becomes evil after losing his love Christine, instead of losing the mobility of his hands. After becoming Sorcerer Supreme, he thinks about a way to bring her back, and ends up becoming obsessed with finding some way to alter the timeline to make it so that Christine is able to stay alive, even after learning from the ghost of the Ancient One that Christine's death is unavoidable, as it is an absolute point in time. The Ancient One warns that to change this point in history would actually lead to the destruction of the universe. Still, Strange is not dissuaded. He ends up, or part of him at least ends up, at the Library of Cagliostro and learns that to break an absolute point in time, he needs to absorb creatures which will basically grant him more power. Basically, he just needs more power, so he's like, I'm gonna summon all these powerful creatures and I'm gonna suck up their power. Eventually, his actions do lead to the destruction of his universe, and he ends up all alone, trapped there, despite his pleas to the Watcher to help him fix the universe as it unravels. But you know the Watcher's like, hey man, I just watch, except for the times when I do get involved, because that does happen. Happens in that show too. Number 1, Disciple of Dormammu. This alternate version of Doctor Strange is probably the one that inspired the MCU Doctor Strange Supreme, at least in part. He hails from the reality of 791218, as seen in the 1977 What If series in issue number 18, where we answer the question, what if Doctor Strange were a disciple of Dormammu? And obviously this has happened a few times in the comics. Here Strange joins Dormammu after Baron Mordo is the one to heal his hands, using the dark magics of Dormammu, also being his disciple. Strange ends up joining with Dormammu and fighting against the Ancient One and their followers, even going on to kill the man who healed him, Baron Mordo, after Dormammu reveals that he only actually needs one disciple, and basically he chooses Strange, who he has deemed to be the superior of the two. This version of Steven gives me major Sith Lord vibes, all in all. You know you're evil when you're giving off Sith Lord vibes.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Iron Goblin. Coming from an alternate universe where the Spider Island event wound up being permanent, Tony Stark was initially transformed into a human-spider hybrid under the control of the villainous Spider-Queen. During a battle with the Resistance, however, Tony was sprayed with the same Goblin formula that had corrupted the mind of Norman Osborn, transforming Tony Stark into the Iron Goblin, with a mechanical new costume to match. And while this version of Tony would eventually decide to sacrifice himself in a last moment of humanity before his Goblin insanity fully took over, the combination of Iron Man and Green Goblin tech is still a pretty terrifying combo that Spider-Man should hope never reappears. Coming in at number 9, we have the corrupted Iron Man from the controversial 90s event, The Crossing. When a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves, Iron Man became a sleeper agent within the Avengers and eventually attacked his companions outright after secretly manipulating them for years. While eventually defeated by a time-traveling 19-year-old version of himself, and then retconned into Tony going back to his usual status quo in the Marvel Universe, this controversial storyline shows what would happen if Iron Man truly turned out to be a traitor. Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Thor. During the event that saw God Emperor Doom in control of a Marvel universe converted into a new Battleworld, Doom maintained his complete control over the many realms of Battleworld with a police force army known as the Thor Corps. One of the most powerful of Doom's personal army was the being known as Iron Thor, wearing a combination of the Iron Man armor and Thor's iconic helmet, and investigating any potential rebellions to his master Doom's rule. Even capable of wielding Mjolnir, this super powerful character still managed to be murdered by the hero Warrior Woman as an example of rebellion against Emperor Doom. He might have had a short life, but man, I really love that Iron Thor design. Coming in at number 7, we have the Steel Corpse. Hailing from Earth 11326, this version of Iron Man was pretty similar to our own, but with two key differences. He's permanently fused with his suit, and he absolutely hates mutants. Fighting alongside other villainous Avengers to wipe out this universe's X-Men, this Iron Man's natural body died long ago after being melded with his machinery, and thus he jokingly calls himself the Steel Corpse as a way of coping with his morbid situation. This version of Iron Man had complete mastery of his weaponry, as they were literally a part of his body, and only a last-second change of heart before sacrificing himself stops this Tony Stark from being one of the absolute worst. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Iron Patriot, aka Norman Osborn. Best known as being the alter ego of Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn has long been one of the biggest threats in the Marvel Universe, manipulating events from afar as the CEO of Oscorp. Following the invasion of Earth by the Skrull army, Norman found himself suddenly in the public eye and with goodwill after being the one to personally defeat the Skrull Queen. Norman would use this influence to lead the Dark Avengers as the Iron Patriot, a twisted version of Iron Man combined with Captain America's patriotism that tricked the public into trusting Norman, and showing that Tony Stark is definitely not the worst billionaire in the Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have the Iron Maniac. On the dark alternate world of Earth 5012, most of the superheroes of this reality are dead after an unknown fatal error made by Reed Richards. A vengeful and violent Tony Stark makes it his life's mission to get revenge on Reed and modifies his armor to resemble that of Reed's worst enemy, Dr. Doom. This insane version of Iron Man killed the Human Torch and was eventually banished to the main Marvel universe, where he had to be subdued by the combined efforts of Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Widow, who found it a bit unnerving to be fighting such a far-gone version of one of their closest allies. This Tony was just as resourceful as the real one, however, as he'd even escape custody by building a new suit from the remains of a life model decoy. Pretty resourceful for an insane Iron Man. Coming in at number 4, we have the Superior Iron Man. During an event known as Axis, many Marvel heroes and villains had their morality completely inverted, with good guys becoming bad, bad guys becoming good, and so on and so forth. One of the few changes that wasn't reversed by the end of the event, however, was the morality of Iron Man, who in his evil form still possessed all of the intelligence and dark aspects of Tony's personality, and managed to build a shield for himself to prevent being turned into a hero again. Infecting much of the planet with a new version of the Extremis virus, and using artificially intelligent drones to assert his dominance, this version of Tony was only finally cured by the Marvel Universe's collapse into Battleworld resetting his morals, meaning that this was a villain that the rest of the Avengers didn't even manage to properly defeat. Coming in at number 3, we have Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger in the very first Iron Man film. It's become a bit of a meme at this point that many of the supervillains of the MCU are dark reflections of the same powers and personalities as the heroes they're opposing, and the Ironmonger is the origin of that trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Completely guilt-free about selling weapons to all sides, Stane is a ruthless businessman willing to do anything to maintain control of Stark Industries, and shows just how awful powerful Tony's new technology could be used in the wrong hands, and what a monster he could become if he gave up on his deepest morals. Although, honestly, the fact that his idea of upgrading the Iron Man suit is just to make the original one bigger, maybe he's not quite as smart as Tony after all. Coming in at number 2, we have the evil Emperor Stark. Hailing from the destroyed world of Earth 42777, this version of Iron Man was perhaps the cruelest the multiverse had ever seen, as he manipulated Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants into declaring war on humanity, then used the resulting anti-mutant backlash to secure power as the world's only superhero. Holding entire countries hostage with natural disasters and even spreading plagues among his own citizens, this version of Tony declared himself Emperor Stark, taking the cloak of Doctor Doom as a final trophy. This was Iron Man at his most evil, and he was an incredibly powerful threat when encountered by the multiverse-traveling Exiles, only eventually defeated by his own universe's last superhero survivor, Sue Storm. A tragic end for a tragic villain. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Zombie Iron Man. When Earth 2149 was first hit by the zombie plague that's since been highlighted in multiple Marvel spin-off series, this version of Iron Man attempted to use teleportation technology to escape to a different universe with Nick Fury. However, a zombified Fantastic Four arrived too quickly for this plan, and Tony was bitten, becoming a living corpse inside his metal armor and developing a bloodlust and pure hunger for human flesh. Still surviving even after having his legs blasted off by the Silver Surfer, the zombified Iron Man would go on to lead the rest of the undead heroes and villains in an attack against Galactus and gain this universe's power cosmic, meaning he could now pursue more flesh throughout the entire universe and bring the zombie plague to the rest of the doomed cosmos.
Number 10. Age of X Avengers. In the Age of X storyline, the mutant population were feared, and after a phoenix-shaped explosion leveled Albany, the culling of the mutants began. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal several buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle, and led by Captain America, to hunt down this resistance of mutants. The team was made up of Captain America, Ghost Rider, who was killed prior to the actual assault on Fortress X, the Hulk, Invisible Woman, Redback, who is this universe's Jessica Drew, and Iron Man / Steel Corps. While the team murdered a lot of mutants, Cap eventually called them off to instead defend the mutants, which activated Steel Corps' Code Omega, causing them to take him out. There was also Plan B, which was the 2 megaton chemical that was carried by the Hulk. Luckily, the mutant population survived this twisted Avenger team.
Number 9. Ultimate Avengers. Not to be confused with the Ultimates, who are very much their own thing. This team of Avengers is actually called the Avengers, but is not the Avengers equivalent from the 1610 Ultimate Universe. Are you confused yet? Basically, in the Ultimate Universe, the Avengers team that we know and love from 616 is a little different, including in name. On Earth 1610, the Earth's mightiest heroes go by the name of the Ultimates, and are pretty buddy-buddy with S.H.I.E.L.D. and its director Nick Fury. However, there is a team in this universe that uses the Avengers moniker, but they are quite different from the Avengers we know from Earth 616. On 1610, the Avengers team is more like DC's Suicide Squad. The team is made up of characters who are seen as more disposable by S.H.I.E.L.D. and who are more anti-heroes or just straight up villains. They are a black ops team who is usually brought on for less publicly marketable missions and jobs.
Number 8. Deathlock Nation. On Earth 11045, the superhumans grew out of control. They began to take the law into their own hands, more and more, acting as judge, jury, and executioner. This led to popular support from the people for Operation Deathlock. Operation Deathlock was a plan conceived by Weapon Infinity of the Weapons Plus breeding facility called the World, to convert all superhumans into Deathlocks. The project began small, with a few normal human Deathlocks, and then those Deathlocks targeted specific heroes who were killed and then converted into super Deathlocks. No hero could stand for long, and soon, all superheroes were converted into mindless police robots, which actually resulted in a utopia. Eventually, these Deathlocks began spreading into other timelines and realities, only to be stopped by Apocalypse. This eventually led a team composed of Deathlock, Captain America, Cyclops, Spider-Man, Elektra, Hawkeye, and the Thing to come into conflict with Earth 616.
Number 7. Cadaverous' Avengers. Cadaverous' Avengers were part machine, part man, and all influenced by the villainous Cadaverous. They show up in whatever alternate world J.J. Abrams and his son Henry Abrams' Spider-Man series is relegated to. I don't think it has an official number yet. It does have a temporary reality number though. This team seemed hell-bent on getting revenge on Iron Man, the only surviving Avenger left in this world. Well, I guess Peter was still alive at this point, and I mean, he's normally a part of the Avengers team, at least at some point, but I mean, in terms of the standard Avengers cast, we've all come to familiarize ourselves with through various forms of media, including the films. I mean, especially the films in this case, just based on the roster. These villainous corpse versions of the former heroes face off against the old Iron Man, Ironheart, Spider-Man's son Ben Parker, and his powerless but enthusiastic friend and love interest, Faye Ito. Or is it Ito Faye? Needless to say, these evil counterparts at least weren't in control of themselves, but instead were being influenced by Cadaverous to fight against their former friend and colleague with the use of old Stark Tech neurochips.
Number 6. The Gatherers. The Gatherers are a team of former Avengers of different alternate realities who survived their world's destruction, tricked by an alternate reality Black Knight named Proctor into believing that their world's Circes were to blame. Proctor united them together and gave them a single enemy, the Circe of Earth 616. The team consisted of alternate reality versions of Proctor, Rick Jones, the Thing or Korg, Swordsman, Black Panther, and the Vision, as well as some unknown original villains. But for them to carry out their vengeance, each member had to kill their Earth 616 counterpart within a certain amount of time, or they would die from cellular breakdown. What the members of the Gatherers did not know is that their leader, Proctor, was responsible for the destruction of each world they are from, as he drove that world's Circe into madness, causing her to lash out and destroy everything around her, all because of a bad breakup. Damn, dude!
Number 5. Android Ultimates. The Android Ultimates come from Ultimates 3. They make their first appearance in issue number 4 of the Ultimates 3 series. This is where we first learn that these Ultimates aren't really the Ultimates at all, but replacements built by Ultron to act just like them. His plan is to use the team of robotic hero impersonators to destroy man and help the machines of the world rise up. Really all machines too. There's a weird part where they're talking about like, we as machines are just seen as these tools. Us toasters, we will unite. It's like very strange. Of course, the Ultimates themselves will have a few things to say about that whole plan. Ultron styles himself after his father Ant-Man, but he and his team wouldn't make it past the next issue. It would later be revealed that their leader Ultron wasn't actually fully in control, but instead was being puppeted by Dr. Doom. So many reveals where people are actually being controlled by someone else.
Number 4. Undead Avengers. The living are not welcome on Earth 666, and the world is only consisting purely of the dead, undead, or supernatural beings. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, and more all exist here, and each group is divided into separate factions. But don't fear, the greatest heroes from across these groups are assembled together to protect this world. They are the Undead Avengers. This team is so cool. A Captain America who never recovered from being a werewolf, a part spider Natasha Romanoff, a devil Daredevil, a mummified Thor the Accursed who wields the backwards Mjolnir that casts black anti-magic energy, Vampire Wolverine, Hawkeye, Franken Castle? I mean, come on. These guys come into conflict with Captain Britain when trying to defend the Orb of Necromancy in order for them to spread undeath across all of reality, and they first appear in Secret Avengers number 33.
Number 3. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers technically hail from Earth 616, but they are a completely alternate team when it comes to their roster and in general their backstory and motives. Well, that is, in a way, the Dark Avengers do attempt to do good, but they are just all approaching it from a more villainous side. And many of the team members don't do good for the sake of doing good, but have their own ulterior motives. So can we really call that good? That's a philosophical question for you. The Dark Avengers were introduced when Norman Osborn was given reign over the heroic team after he'd been declared a hero for killing the Skrull Queen Veronki. Aside from getting to build his own Avengers team, which would replace the previous one, S.H.I.E.L.D. had been disbanded and Osborn was allowed to create his own organization organization to replace it, using the acronym HAMMER, which really doesn't stand for anything. Osborn just thought it sounded cool, so that's not really an acronym, it's just capitalized letters at that point. He pulled together his own Avengers team, which publication-wise became known as the Dark Avengers, composed of various Marvel villains, anti-heroes, and misled heroes in some cases, or heroes who were just like really lost at the time, who Osborn united when the standard Avengers hero members refused to join his team. He did try though. He was like, hey Carol, come be on this team. She was like, hell no.
Number 2. Zombie Galacti. I think most of us are familiar with Earth 2149, which is the home of the Marvel Zombie storyline. Here, a separate reality zombie-infected sentry was sent by his Earth's Watcher. The Avengers were the first on the scene and quickly died or were infected, with the rest of the population falling quickly afterwards. Once the Herald of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, showed up to announce the arrival of Galactus, he was consumed by Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Giant Man, Power Man, and Captain America, who absorbed his powers and used it to toast other zombies to improve their flavor. Gordon Ramsay would not approve. The zombie Galacti used the machine to unite their power cosmic to take down Galactus, and after fighting their zombie villains, consumed and absorbed his power too, using it to spread the infection throughout the whole of their universe.
Number 1. Revengers. The Cancerverse Avengers, known as the Revengers, hail from a reality where the world was turned upside down by the fact that death was defeated. I know, how can you kill death? Well, apparently when you make deals with elder god-like beings, anything is possible, like what happened here. In a bid to save Captain Marvel from life-threatening cancer, a deal was struck with the Many-Angled Ones. As a result, Death ended up dead, which actually resulted in the whole universe becoming a perverted version of itself. You'd think without Death around, the universe would become like a paradise. But no, it became rank with disease that spread and basically couldn't die, becoming known as the Cancerverse. All the heroes who remained here were made to serve the Many-Angled Ones, becoming their loyal servants and attempting to invade other universes eventually and conquer them in the name of their Lovecraftian horror-esque gods, Avengers included, or Revengers included.
Number 10. Joe Fixit. I think he looks just downright adorable in that suit, but his actions are definitely not adorable. Joe Fixit is essentially the Grey Hulk, which is a weaker, darker Hulk persona that resides inside Bruce's head. Joe is a trickster. He's manipulative, doesn't really care for others. He can drive a car. He has a twin pair of Tommy guns. Oh, and did I mention the suit because he wears a suit? Joe Fixit Hulk took up a job as an enforcer at a casino, which is where all of this mafioso business came from. And he stayed this way for several months, not reverting back into Bruce for the duration of this period. He even had a relationship at this time, like a whole relationship that blossomed and peaked and ended. Mr. Fixit came to an end eventually thanks to the magia. Hey, forget about it though. We're moving on to number 9. Number 9. War Hulk. This version of Hulk came about when the mutant apocalypse promised the Hulk he would remove a piece of shrapnel that was in his brain if he became his War, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This meant that Hulk would be imbued with the power of the Celestials. That's a lot of power! As War, Hulk faced off against both the Absorbing Man and Juggernaut. But what he didn't know was that these two were accompanied by Rick and Janice Jones, Bruce's best and longtime friends. As Hulk was about to kill Juggernaut and the Absorbing Man, Rick jumped in the way, and Hulk got Rick instead, crippling him. The image of his friend, hurt by his own actions, caused Hulk to break of Apocalypse's influence and run away, ashamed of his actions. Number 8. Claw. Claw, which is Hulk backwards, very creative, is basically what happens when the Hulk goes Hulk. He is another one of the evil personalities inside Hulk's head. This version of Hulk has black skin with glowing red scars. He has red demonic eyes, white hair, and big talons. Claw emerges when Hulk reaches a sufficient level of rage, meaning he is more powerful than any other rage-boosted version of the Green Hulk, which is insane if you know about a certain world-breaking version of the character. This version of Hulk is usually suppressed and has only shown up a few times, and not for very long, I might add. He appeared in the Axis storyline where heroes and villains had their moralities switched. Hulk isn't exactly always a good guy, sometimes letting his rage hurt good and bad guys. But since Claw is his opposite, he lets his rage hurt and maim everyone, good and bad, putting even the villains on alert. Look, he just wants to bathe in the blood of the innocents. That's reasonable, right? Number 7. Zombie Hulk. Whoever came up with the Marvel Zombie story deserves a big old round of applause. I don't care how silly it is. you turned Hulk into a hunger monster. Bravo. When Hulk gets infected with the zombie virus, presumably by Reed Richards aboard the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, the already basically unstoppable hero becomes a flesh-consuming zombie. After a while, the Hulk and other zombified heroes consumed Silver Surfer, gaining the power Cosmic, and after modifying that power, soon defeated and consumed Galactus, making them the next Galactus, or Galacti, or whatever. Which kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? Because zombies eat people, and Galactus eats planets. It's kind of like the natural progression of things, right? Using their newfound powers, the zombies traveled through the cosmos, devouring planets as they went. I think my favorite moment, though, would have to be when zombie Thanos calls zombie Hulk out for eating twice as much as everyone else, because, I mean, he's the Hulk, man's gotta eat. But in return, Hulk calls Thanos Prune Chin, which is just hilarious. Number 6, Guilt Hulk. Yet another split personality or alter ego of Bruce. The Guilt Hulk is very similar to Devil Hulk, who represents his anger, only this version of Hulk represents all the guilt and regret that the Hulk feels for all the horrible things he has done while in his Hulk form, as well as the horrible things done to him as Banner, which ultimately means that this persona is quite a bit stronger than its counterpart. What do I mean by the horrible things done to Banner? Well, apart from being feared and shunned and usually living a very, very lonely life, from a much too young age, Bruce suffered constant abuse from his father, Brian Banner, and this abuse caused all kinds of mental problems for Bruce. The Guilt Hulk, as well as the Devil Hulk, and a few other Evil Hulk alter egos, are directly related to this abuse, with Guilt Hulk even taking the form of Bruce's father before becoming this thing. This Hulk is incredibly powerful, and it took the combined efforts of many of Bruce's other alter egos to hold and keep the Guilt Hulk persona repressed deep in Bruce's mind. Number 5, Pappy Banner. If you've never read the Old Man Logan storyline, I'm gonna warn you now. It is graphic. In this storyline, almost all of the other heroes are dead, and the villains rule, holding various different kingdoms. But Hulk is still here, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Years and years of gamma exposure affected him, making him more and more villainous. This Hulk, referred to as Pappy Banner, has claimed a large part of America, which includes California, as his own. He also has a gang now, but these aren't just normal gang members, no. These guys are all the interbred children of the Hulk and his cousin, Jennifer Walters, otherwise known as She-Hulk. When members of this gang murder his new family for fun, Wolverine goes on a crazed rampage, killing almost all the members of the Hulk family, including She-Hulk. The Old Man Bruce and Old Man Logan end up facing off, until Bruce transforms into the Hulk, who is massive compared to his normal 616 self. Like 3 stories tall massive. He also really let himself go. Just saying. The Jumbo Hillbilly Hulk swallowed Logan whole, prompting Logan to cut his way out of the Hulk. Number 4, Infernal Hulk. On Earth 11638, Bruce Banner was kind of sick of dealing with the raging and the rampaging of the Hulk. So, when Spider-Man introduced Bruce to Stephen Strange, he became his apprentice and learned how to separate himself from the Hulk entity by sending it to hell and making it a demon. It worked though, except for when the 616 Hulk, along with Deadpool and Spider-Man, came to this 11638 Earth. The Infernal Hulk managed to enter back into the realm of Earth, swapping places with 616 Earth's Hulk persona. Infernal Hulk went after Sorcerer Supreme Bruce Banner, who was saved by both Deadpool and Spider-Man. How did they defeat this demon Hulk though? Well, Dr. Bruce reversed the banishing spell that sent Hulk to hell, and just before Infernal Hulk could return to his body, Bruce had his neck snapped, killing him, obviously. But his spirit lived on in the astral plane, so it's all good. Hey big guys, sun's getting real low. Oh, wait, no, we still gotta do the top 3. Well hey, now that you're here, why not give us a like and a subscribe? If you're enjoying the video, that is. It would really help us out. We don't get strong with rage, we get strong with your support. Okay, I'm sorry y'all. Let's just get on with the video, okay? Number 3, Null, Breaker of Worlds. Ever thought that Hulk should get a hammer like Thor? No? Me neither. But it is awesome. When Kal Borsun the Serpent sent down 7 magical hammers that represented his 7 followers to Earth, the hammer Null found its way to our lovely green friend, transforming him into Null, the Breaker of Worlds. Hulk/Null went a-smashing, rampaging all over South America, bringing him into conflict with the Avengers, who he defeated, and eventually with a solo Thor. When fighting Thor, Null teamed up with Angrier, Breaker of Souls, which was Ben Grimm the Thing, who was defeated by Thor. But we all know who is the strongest Avenger, don't we? Null was easily too powerful for Thor, and instead of facing him one-on-one, the God of Thunder threw Hulk into orbit. He landed in Transylvania and started taking on Dracula and his minions. It was only after Inca, disguised as Betty Ross, showed up that Hulk threw the hammer aside and left, wanting to be alone. Number 2, Worldbreaker Hulk. Now, it's fair to say that Worldbreaker Hulk deserves the top spot on this list, but I mean, gosh, I just don't think he's that evil. I'm kind of on his side. I cannot lie, but he still gets the number 2 spot because the level of power of this version of Hulk is insane. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle he was sent to Sakaar in blows up, killing the Green Scar's wife and children. Hulk reaches a whole new level of anger, which is directed at those who sent him here, the Illuminati. And so, he headed to Earth with his Warsworn. He made a quick stop at the moon though to defeat Black Bolt of the Inhumans. When he got to Earth, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated. And when that time limit stopped, well, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster armor, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, who, if you don't know who Zom is, you should go watch the top 10 most powerful Doctor Strange villains videos. It's insane. And Ghost Rider, all while saving the innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them as he only sought justice, not murder. He was eventually sorta defeated by the Sentry, who he fought until they both reverted back to their human forms, which is when Bruce Banner knocked out Bob Reynolds. So look, if you haven't read this story, please do it. Number 1, Maestro. Okay, imagine a version of the Hulk with twice his strength, who retains the intelligence of Bruce Banner, right? Now take that Hulk and make him a ruthless, tyrannical ruler, and you get Maestro. Maestro is a possible future version of the Hulk who kills literally all the other heroes and villains and names himself Emperor over the whole world. Our Hulk first comes into contact with him when Rick Jones's daughter takes him into the future to fight his evil future self. But this Maestro guy, he ain't playing around, okay? In the very first fight, Maestro won by simply snapping Hulk's neck. That's it. Done. Over. And then he waited for Hulk to heal, taunting him and villain monologuing at him the whole time about all the terrible things they go through as the Hulk. The only way our Hulk could win was to bring Maestro back in time to when they gained their abilities, the Gamma Bomb, which destroyed Maestro on the atomic scale. The sheer idea of Maestro haunted Bruce and the Hulk's thoughts for the rest of time, wanting never to become that level of evil.